This is one of the greatest episodes in the 40-year franchise of Transformers, and it helped save my life. In case you don't know me, I'm Dr. Tank. I help very intelligent people control their emotions, because when you're really intelligent, you don't focus your mind a lot on the emotional state. And because of that, when the emotions take over, they're very powerful. You can check out the Emotional RX program in the link down below, where I show you steps based on science and psychology on how to actionably control your emotions, instead of using psychological tricks that may or may not work. The program also provides accountability, so that not only do you talk about being mentally strong, but you become it. Find more information in the link down below. Before we begin, I just want to point out that there's a major spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the show, watch it first and then come back to this video. In this episode of Beast Wars, it is one of the most intense episodes of any kid's show I've ever seen. But why am I talking about a 20-year-old cartoon? See, I loved Transformers when I was a kid, and I've always loved it, simply based on the concept that I get two toys in one. So obviously I was sucked into the media surrounding it. And when this show started coming out, Beast Wars, I got sucked into the giant commercial. But this episode digs very deep into the psychology of people. In addition, it talks about why people would want to end their life. And it also addresses some of life's philosophy. But first, how did we get here? Code of Hero was the 9th episode of the 2nd season of Beast Wars. It's the 35th episode of it all, and it's written by Ian Weir. Now, something to keep in mind was that Season 2 of Beast Wars was so dark, they had to add slapstick humor to Season 3 just to lighten the tone. In fact, this very episode was removed from replay on Fox Kids because it had graphic themes and violence for a kid show. Now, in the series, this character named Dinobot began as a villain, but he changed sides because he felt disrespected by the leadership. And in an episode leading to this one, he changed sides to the bad guy's side. He wanted to search for meaning in his life, and he needed answers, but he quickly changed back to the heroes. Unfortunately, in the process, he gave up Golden Disc to the villains. This Golden Disc contained information about the future of the characters, and this very well could have costed the heroes the war. Now, when this episode starts out, there's a subplot about the early humanoids, but right after, this episode starts hitting hard. And we're going to talk about it in 3 sections. The first section is the failure. This episode starts hitting hard because Dinobot contemplates about the mistakes he's made, and we've all been there. We've made some mistakes that we felt so ashamed we want to escape, and we feel horrible about it. Maybe we did it for good intentions, or maybe we did it for personal gain, but in the end, it caused some major damage. But this is a lot more than that. What happens when failure encompasses your entire identity? This is such an incredibly profound concept to address in a kid's show. See, Dinobot always identifies himself as a warrior with honor.
I am a warrior.
Warrior, by definition, engages in struggle and conflict. So when he feels like he's betrayed his own identity, he feels like he's made a grave mistake. And he even says,
Destiny is one great test in store for us all. Is mine already come? And have I failed it?
In his book, Emotional First Aid, Dr. Winch says that failure inflicts 3 kinds of psychological wounds. They damage our confidence and self-esteem and make our goals seem further out of reach. They distort our perceptions and make us feel hopeless about succeeding. And 3, it compels us to give up or stop trying. In this case, Dinobot almost wants to give up and stop trying. He sees his failure as more than just a mistake in action, but rather a mistake in his identity. He's lived his entire life by his own code of honor. But what happens when he breaks that code of honor? He betrayed his teammates, going over to the evil side for a while, and he gave up a tactical advantage, just for personal gain. So what happens when he breaks his own personal code? There's nobody there to really punish him for it. So the guilt weighs down on him more than anything. And he's always identified himself as a warrior, but someone who takes his own life is a coward. By definition, suicide is the opposite of struggling with conflict because you want to escape it. And a coward shows disgraceful fear. They want to run away from the situation and escape it. And that is the fight or flight response in play. A coward would take the easy way out and avoid the struggle. This urge to escape pain and struggle plays a huge role in our daily life. It's the fundamental basis of the fight or flight mechanism. Many people who have identity crises will take their own lives if they feel their sense of self is lost. And many aspects of identity are tied to our daily lives. The CDC says that people who lose certain things around their daily life are at risk for suicide, some of which include loss of family, job, finances, sense of purpose, and helplessness can trigger turmoil and make people want to escape. If we identify ourselves with these extrinsic properties, we're at risk if they're ever lost. And you'll see people who lose their jobs struggle with depression because they identify themselves so clearly and definitively with that job. It makes you question your sense of agency. What purpose do you have anymore if you don't have a job and you were the main breadwinner and that was your only role? Viktor Frankl, in his book Man's Search for Meaning, says, "Life is never unbearable by circumstances, but only by the lack of meaning and purpose." If we lose sight of meaning and we lose our sense of identity, we begin to spiral downward to depression. And it doesn't have to be profound life goals either. They can be goals to improve, grow, challenge yourself, or simply enjoy life. They have to be clearly defined by yourself and not based on extrinsic factors. So when Dinobot breaks his sense of identity by not living up to his code of honor and honoring his teammates, he contemplates taking his own life. Fortunately, he's so disgusted by the fact that he wanted to take his own life that he doesn't do it, because that isn't the way of the warrior. When life's difficult, it's easy to give up. But a warrior stands up to the conflict, and he has established himself as a warrior. The next part we'll talk about is the empowerment. The conflict that ensues afterwards with his teammate, Rat Trap, begins to shift his mindset. He shifts his mind from being a victim to being empowered. As he leaves his room to go for a walk, his teammate, Rat Trap, confronts him. He calls him out for his mistakes, and they begin to argue. Rat Trap calls out the fact that Dinobot keeps switching sides, and his trust is questionable. He also says that the actions speak for themselves, which we'll cover later. Most notably, Rat Trap finishes the argument by saying,
"Guess we live and learn."
Now this phrase has a double meaning. On the one hand, Rat Trap talks about how he learns that Dinobot can't be trusted. But on the other hand, on a more meta level, it talks about how life is about learning, and sometimes you can't learn without making mistakes. This is where Dinobot begins to shift his mindset. The words challenge Dinobot's perspective that life isn't preordained. He begins to question the belief that his destiny is already set in stone. Now, the empowerment he attains from the mental shift is that the isn't written in stone. It can be changed based on the decisions and actions that we take on a daily basis. Now, the victim mindset, on the other hand, will believe the future is fixed. A victim believes that they're nothing more than a pawn in life. They believe their actions have zero consequences. Dinobot chooses to take the path of a warrior, a path that faces the struggle, and out of that conflict, he learns.
A deed once done cannot be undone. But perhaps it may yet be mitigated.
We all make mistakes, some bigger than others. But without the mistakes, we won't learn and grow. The key here is to not sit and mope about our failures. That's the victim mindset. The key here is to find the lesson. Viktor Frankl says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And Dinobot takes action so that he could change himself. In this third section, we're going to talk about the hero. Now, Dinobot tries to correct his mistakes by following the villains. After his shift in mindset, he realizes the future can be changed. In a very meta statement, he says,
When reality alters, the future alters with it.
Now, this doesn't apply to just changing the events in the show's future. It also applies to Dinobot's mental state, and in doing so, it also could apply to us, the audience. Dinobot realizes that his empowerment to change the reality he exists in comes from believing you can make a difference. Dinobot realizes the future can be changed when you take action. Now, the villains take their newfound knowledge and apply it to gain power. They forcibly attack the early hominids in order to change the future. The use of force and strength to control others is the unofficial slogan of bullies, and personally, it's one of my triggers. It removes the agency that people have because it makes them feel helpless. And some people in this mode of helplessness may even take their own lives. And when faced with this situation, Dinobot has 3 options. He either helps the villains, choose to do nothing, or help the early hominids. If he helps the villains, he loses his honor. He betrays his warrior identity. He also doesn't learn from his mistakes, all of which will only continue to haunt him for the rest of his life. If he does nothing, he takes no responsibility for the conflict. He believes the future is set and he has no agency. However, inaction can reflect as cowardice behavior. This inaction would continue to reflect a life without purpose. Making this choice is a choice in and of itself, a choice to distance yourself from the conflict, and thus deprioritizing it. But for Dinobot to continue to be part of the conflict and not choose a side is difficult. He would be haunted by the guilt of not standing up for his own moral code of honor. Ultimately, he selects the third option, to help the early hominids. This choice supports his identity of being a warrior, enduring conflict for growth, restoring his honor, learning from his mistakes, and trying to repair it the best that he can. As he points out, it seems to be that he doesn't have a choice at all, because having compassion and being a hero means making the right choice. He realizes the future, although malleable, ironically must be maintained in order to protect the hominid. So making a positive difference in the world that we live in requires learning from mistakes and growing so that we can empower ourselves and others. That's the code of hero. It's not about money, powers, technology, or its application. You could have the latest and greatest weapons and technology, but if you don't provide empowerment or hope, you don't provide strength to others. It's not compassion that makes you weak, but rather the compassion brings strength to others and also makes you strong. Batman empowers people by giving them back their city so they could live safely. Superman provides hope that they could stand up for each other in a safe world. The X-Men protect their kind from bullies and prejudice. Everything can be taken from man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's own way. The freedom and empowerment that comes from being a hero and helping others means providing them with strength, compassion, and hope. And it all sounds corny, but if we're not here to help support each other, why are we even here at all? What do you guys think? Have you seen this episode? If so, what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, guys, never give up on yourself.